Every year we like to stop at the halfway point and take a look back. It might seem kind of weird, but it's our way of catching our breath with all the games releasing all of the time. So it's June 2018 and we're breaking down 20 of the best games of 2018 so far. Now, some quick disclaimers. When we made this, we tried to avoid talking about re-releases for the most part, and we just went and picked our favorites. We know there are way more games, so we're looking forward to hearing yours in the comments. But let's get started off with number 20 and talk about Into the Breach. This, as of right now, PC-only, semi-indie game is from the creators of FTL, also known as Faster Than Light. It was one of the best games when it released a few years back. It had an immense challenge and a really addictive hook, and Into the Breach keeps it up. It's very different. It's more of a mech-based top-down strategy game, but in terms of sound, art, and just general challenge and strategy, this thing is unmatched, and it's definitely worth playing if you have a PC and if this style of game piques your interest. You play as a mech, and it's mechs versus aliens, and it's turn-based, and while it might look simple judging from this video, there's a lot more to sink your teeth into than you might expect. Now, next at number 19, we have Detroit Become Human. This PlayStation exclusive has been divisive. Some people love Quantic Dream games and their goofy stories. Some people think they're too awkward with not enough gameplay, but we here at GameRanx found Detroit Become Human to be one of the more satisfying Quantic Dream games that not only looks incredible, but tells a pretty interesting story with some enjoyable characters. The story takes place in near future Detroit where androids are built and they're essentially slaves for the humans, like almost like worker drones, and it follows 3 separate stories of 3 different android characters. There's Marcus, who eventually becomes this freedom fighter. There's Kara, a caretaking android who is suddenly tasked with taking care of a young human. And my favorite character, Connor, who's like a prototype homicide detective android who works with a human partner, and for some reason, he talks like this. I think it's a lot of fun, and best of all, it warrants multiple playthroughs because there are so many different branching decisions you can get. It's a very ambitious narrative, and while it does stumble here and there, just playing it and seeing what happens next to, say, another playthrough that your friend had is really worth the experience. Now, next at number 18, speaking of another PlayStation game, we have Shadow of the Colossus. Now, we didn't want to talk about a lot of re-releases and stuff, but this is worth bringing up, especially if you're the type of player that didn't get your hands on this game when it first released. Now is the chance, because Shadow of the Colossus is a classic for a reason. It's a very simple premise. You are a lone wanderer who is tasked with slaying giants in a large open world. You have your horse, you have a bow, you have a sword. That's about it. It sounds really simple, but just from the story, the visuals, the music, the sense of loneliness, and the fun gameplay of fighting these monsters, it really just makes it a satisfying gameplay experience. If you like satisfying action-adventure games, anything from Zelda to anything else in between, I think you should consider Shadow of the Colossus if you haven't already. I mean, look at this game. Now, next at number 17, we have Kingdom Come Deliverance. This is a first-person game that is based on a real-world medieval Bohemia, and it really emphasizes realism. Now, I'll be honest, with the before you buy, I was pretty hard on this game, but it seems like they fixed a lot of the bugs, and generally, most audiences found it interesting. You know, the sense of realism and the more slow, realistic, deliberate combat isn't for everyone, but for the audience that was hoping for a game like this, they seem to be satisfied, and I gotta give them props for that. Don't go into this expecting it to be like The Witcher based in real history, because it's a little bit different than that, but the story is fairly interesting, and there is a lot of passion behind this game, so consider it. Now, next at number 16, we want to talk about Subnautica, which is a game that has finally released out of early access. It's a full game, you can play it straight up, and it's a really satisfying survival game that really goes above and beyond what a lot of other survival games do. There's a lot here. It's all based around a unique premise of exploring an alien ocean where there are coral reefs, underground caves, volcanoes, and it does have a lot of mystery and a surprising amount of story, and really just does cater to a solo playthrough more than you'd expect. Not to mention, it looks damn good. I would say if you play one survival game this year, I would skip Metal Gear Survive and I would check out something like Subnautica. Now, next at number 15, we have another divisive one on the list, and that is Sea of Thieves. Now, Sea of Thieves, to many people, released kind of content light. I thought the bare bones were there. I like pirate games, and I like social games when they try new things. And now that Sea of Thieves seems to finally be catching up to itself with content, I think it's worth pointing out because the game did find a loyal fan base. As much as I was burnt out on it pretty quickly, like a lot of other games in this style, it's worth pointing out that there is a community there, and they are engaged, and they are enjoying the game. It does have really special moments, and if you do find a good group of people to play with, you will have a good time, especially if you just just like pirate nonsense. There's something special about this game, and it's gonna take time for it to realize its full potential, but I think it's getting there. Now, next up at number 14, we have Celeste. This is a game that really slipped by on a lot of people's radar, but it's worth acknowledging because I think it's got a lot going on and there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. Celeste has a simple premise of a girl questing to the top of a mountain on a personal journey, and while it doesn't look like there's a heavy focus on story, the simplicity and just the tact of how the story is told about this character's personal journey just really nailed it for a lot of people. Not to mention that the game itself is really fun to play. It's a really clever mix of something like Super Meat Boy and a Metroidvania style game, and really a bunch of other genres thrown in, but it's fun, and the music is some of the best of this year so far. It's on a lot of platforms, so definitely consider it. Don't let Celeste slip by you. Next at number 13, we have Ni no Kuni 2. Ni no Kuni 2 is a solid JRPG, and a lengthy one. If that's what you're looking for, you're gonna get it here. Now, there has been a lot of discussion of whether or not this reaches the heights of the original game. I don't know. This game heads in a very different direction than the original game, and no, you didn't really have to have played the original Ni no Kuni to understand this one, but the premise is pretty unique. I'm not gonna spoil it, but not only does it have some pretty exciting combat, exploration, there's also a small city and town building mechanic that I think fans of Dark Cloud and stuff like that will really enjoy. Plus, the game just looks so cool. That art style is very unique, and I hate to judge games on visuals sometimes, but that's actually part of the price of admission here. It's definitely worth it. Now, next at number 12, we have A Way Out. I never expected to gush about this game, but everyone here really enjoys it. This is a co-op adventure that actually needs to be played 100% cooperatively, and it's for good reason. It does a lot of interesting things. It puts you in different scenarios that are a lot of fun and also just very gut-wrenching and kind of challenging, and it's just a good time, especially if you play with someone on the couch next to you. We give A Way Out props for just taking a co-op game and adding a new level to it, changing things up just enough to really keep things interesting. The story and the voice acting can be a little cringeworthy, but just the situations it puts you in are so fun that it's just a good video game playthrough. Plus, this game could have been a complete disaster, and the fact that it's on our top 20 list is pretty awesome. And next up at number 11, we have Vampire, or some folks in Europe call it Vampire. Here at GameRanks, we are head over heels for this game. You know, if you're looking for just a good old single-player narrative, this one is pretty cool. Surprisingly enough, it's got a lot of RPG elements, and there's a huge emphasis on really just building character, like talking to characters in the world, conversations, making different choices. It's all about that, but then of course it is a vampire game where you are a vampire in 1900s London stricken by disease, and it's up to you to basically choose who lives or dies and who you want to feed on to survive and level up. And the game does really interesting things with moral choices and a gray area that most games usually just keep pretty binary. For that alone, and the spooky atmosphere, I think Vampire is totally worth experiencing, and we're so happy to include it on this list. Next up at number 10, we have State of Decay 2, a game that follows up and really tries to capitalize on the potential of the original cult hit game. State of Decay 2 adds a lot of stuff, most notably co-op, which kind of just makes the zombie world that much more fun. Now, this isn't just a zombie killing game. It's really based around the survival mechanics and building up a community of survivors. Think of something like The Walking Dead, where it's one group of people who stick together and find a place to live and hole up there. Of course, it never really works out, and the same goes for State of Decay 2 and that world, because it's harsh and unforgiving, and it requires constant upkeep and proper strategy and inventory management. That's really the name of the game. It's a lot of resourcing stuff and less about actually killing zombies. There were a lot of glitches and stuff, but they have been working on the game, and fans of the series are really thrilled by this one. If you're burnt out on zombie games and you're looking for something a little bit different gameplay-wise, I would check out State of Decay 2, especially if you'd never checked out the first one. Next at number 9 for PC folks, we have Frostpunk. This is a survival game, but it's a really weird one because it's actually kind of labeled as a society survival game. That sounds like some weird made-up genre, and it kinda is, but it's really cool. You're in charge of managing basically the last city on Earth in this post-apocalyptic setting, and it's up to you to juggle both building up the citizens and keeping them happy while also messing with the infrastructure of your city. It's incredibly difficult and tense and very challenging because you're constantly faced with very tough decisions to make. This is a unique world that is completely frozen over, and it relies on steampunk technology for everybody to survive, so resources are very slight, and it absolutely does not hold your hand either. But it's just a good management sim. I would say if you're into stuff like Civilization, but you're wanting something completely different, check out Frostpunk. It will enthrall you and it will also kick your ass. Now next at number 8, we have Warhammer Vermintide 2. I'll admit, on the GameRanks channel, we didn't talk about the original Vermintide as much as we should have, but we're gonna make sure that doesn't happen with Vermintide 2 because it's really awesome and satisfying. This is a chaotic game just focused on killing stuff, and it's way better with friends. I don't want to like generalize and kind of downplay it too much, but think of something like Left 4 Dead, but in the spookier sides of the Warhammer universe. And chances are, if you don't live under a rock on the internet, you've heard someone raving about how fun this game is. Just straight up old video game fun. There are 5 different hero classes to choose from, but they all have modifiers, so there's 15 different careers therein to work through and progress through. And the game is just good first-person co-op fun. It's mostly all melee based, so it feels a bit refreshing in that regard, and it's a blast. It's an absolute blast. Next at number 7, we have Mario Tennis Aces. This is the Switch game a lot of folks have been waiting for, and it does live up to the hype if you are a fan of Mario Tennis and Mario sports games. This one definitely has enough to sink your teeth in, and it's fun not only just by yourself, but importantly with friends in local or online multiplayer. Plus there's the full tournament mode, which lets you play with the CPU, and this time around there's over 15 different characters. I think Mario Tennis does a really good job of balancing just easy pick up and play, pop a Joy-Con out, play casual with your friends or family, and giving just enough for hardcore folks to really sink their teeth into, like tournament options, CPU stuff, but also a decent online component. Plus the game also looks pretty damn gorgeous, and the little tweaks they add to the gameplay give you a slightly new level of depth and strategy if you're looking for it. And if you're not looking for any of that stuff, it's just a good time straight up. Down to number 6, speaking of a good time, we got Yakuza 6. Honestly, any Yakuza game deserves a spot on a list because it's just a great series that a lot of people in the West are finally catching on to. If you're coming into this, Yakuza 6 is actually basically the end of the tale of Kazuma Kiryu, who the games have been following since the very beginning. Yakuza 6 gives you a new environment to explore and a complex tale. Honestly, these games are very hard to describe in just a couple seconds, but they do a really good job of being a Street Fighter brawler beat 'em up style game with tense Japanese soap opera drama while also mixing in a bunch of goofy dumb mini games and stuff. It straddles all those lines perfectly, and even if you're not into Yakuza 6, you should consider the original Yakuza or Yakuza 0 to get started. But if you did go through those, Yakuza 6 is really fun and the gameplay is solid. Plus, those finishing moves just never get old. And at number 5, we have Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire. If you're looking for a classic, old school RPG, specifically a PC-style RPG, Pillars of Eternity 2 definitely lives up to the original Pillars of Eternity. Here, it's really focused around a new region and more emphasis on ship and naval stuff. You can build up your own crew, engage in naval battles while you're exploring the map, and then of course there's just the good old RPG, dungeon crawling, and character building. Character building here is incredibly complex and really satisfying, and if you like tweaking people's stats, their individual abilities, and their clothing and armor, and just kind of always searching for the best loot, Pillars of Eternity 2 is really damn satisfying. I never ended up coming around to finish the original, but this game kind of turned me into a big fan. Now down to number 4, we have Far Cry 5. This is a new Far Cry game that honestly, to me, after I played it and finished it, didn't reinvent the wheel, but it is an absolute ton of fun. And it pretty much takes the classic Far Cry formula that you know, changes things up a little bit in terms of emphasizing more exploration. Climbing a tower doesn't just automatically fill out your map. The game really kind of entrusts you to organically discover things to do on your own. It definitely makes a difference. Not only that, the setting of actual America, the Midwest, Montana. They didn't take it as far as I wanted it to. There's a lot of wilderness, but the small bits of Americana you get do actually feel authentic, and it's very weird and different to play a Far Cry game that takes place in the United States. But still, it's really cool. I will say it's far from perfect. It's not a perfect Far Cry game even, but there are just some really, really fun scenarios going on here. The level editor is absolutely badass and worth checking out even if you're not creative. And I'm even keeping my eye on some of the DLC they're adding. These new different game concepts seem pretty cool. Down to the final 3, we got Dragon Ball FighterZ. This is probably the fighting game you should be playing, at least for the first half of this year. There are more things down the line that look very exciting, but Dragon Ball FighterZ actually nails it. Like, just looking at it visually, that's enough. That's what got me into it. But not only does the game look incredible and feel exactly like it should, it's fun to play too. And I think it does have a good mix of being fun to play for casual people who suck at fighting games like me, while also having enough depth to really be picked up by more hardcore fighting game fans in the tournament scenes. The people behind this game knew what they were doing. It's not their first fighting game, and it definitely shows. But even just in terms fan service for Dragon Ball fans, there's a lot of that, so consider it. Now down to number 2, we have Monster Hunter World. I will say 100%, if you are not a fan of Monster Hunter games or they just never hooked you, this would be the one to convert you, absolutely. It does a great job of not alienating Monster Hunter fans, and it doesn't ditch what made Monster Hunter games great, but it does kind of repackage things and make it more presentable for new fans to come on board, and I think it absolutely succeeds. I love Monster Hunter World, and now I'm playing all the Monster Hunter games, and I never thought that would happen. This is a game that's satisfying and really challenging. It's got a steep learning curve. There's a lot of things you gotta figure out, but once you get into the swing of things, you'll find a very rewarding game that you can sink hours and hours and hours into. If you've been on the fence or outside of the fence in the series, I think this is the one to check out. And from what I've heard, people who have been fans of the series for a long time are satisfied. So I think that's a win for everyone. Now coming down to number 1, we got God of War. We're just a big fan of single player narrative games here, and God of War frickin' nails it. It does a really good job of taking the series to a completely new world and completely new gameplay style and tone and everything, while still managing to maintain its identity 100%. This doesn't feel like a God of War reboot. It feels like a God of War game that grew up or slightly changed. And thankfully, the biggest thing, while there is an emphasis on tone and story and it's an old, sad Kratos, it still manages to play like a damn video game and be lots of fun, have plenty of things to explore and do, a combat system that is satisfying and complex enough to keep you busy throughout the entire game and leveling up your character. And it's nice every once in a while to just experience a video game that from beginning to end has a competent and well-told story that actually kind of pays off. Sure, it sets it up for sequels, but the journey from A to B in this game is one that we really think you should experience. But folks, those are 20 of our favorite games from 2018 so far. Like I said, there are a lot more out there. There's a lot of great indies and a lot of great PC games and Switch games that we didn't have time to cover, but we want to hear from you guys down in the comments. What games have you enjoyed the most that have released in this first half of 2018? Let's talk. We want to hear from you guys. If you did enjoy this video and maybe learned about a game or two, clicking the like button does really help us out. We do appreciate it. But if you are new, you should consider subscribing because we put out videos every single day and you're joining an army of 4 million of us strong. But either way, as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.